لن يستنكف المسيح أن يكون عبدا لله ولا الملائكة المقربون ومن يستنكف عن عبادته ويستكبر فيحشوهم إليه جميعا فأما الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فيوفيهم أجورهم ويزيدهم من فضله وأما الذين استنكفوا واستكبروا فيعذبهم عذابا أليما ولا يجدون لهم من دون الله وليا ولا نصيرا يا أيها الناس قد جاءكم برهان من ربكم وأنزلنا إليكم نورا مبينا فأما الذين آمنوا بالله واعتصموا به فسيدخلهم في رحمة منه وفضل ويهديهم إليه صراطا مستقيما صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Hazrat Haq Jalla wa ala shanuhu wa azza ismuhu says, Lan yastankifa, will never disdain, will never hate, Al-Masihu, the Messiah, Jesus, an yakuna, to be, abdan, slave, lillahi, of Allah, walal malaika, and neither the angels, al-muqarrabun, the nearest to Allah. The Messiah will never disdain, will never hate to be the slave of Allah, and not the angels, the nearest angel to Allah. Waman, and whosoever, yastankif, disdains, an ibadatihi, from his slavery, from his worshipping, وَيَسْتَكْبِرْ, and pride themselves on it, فَسَيَحْشُرُ, so very soon Allah will gather them, Allah will congregate them, Allah will put them together, إِلَيْهِ, to Himself, جَمِيعًا, totality of them, all of them. And whosoever disdains or hides to be the slave of Allah or of worshipping of Allah and pride himself on it, فَسَيَحْشُرُهُمْ إِلَيْهِ جَمِيعًا, so Allah will very soon put them together to Himself. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, so as far as those people are concerned, allazina who amanu believe, wa amilu and do as-salihat the good deeds, fa so yuwaffi will complete him them ujurahum their rewards, their remunerations, wow and yazida will increase them will increase to them min fadlihi out of his blessing, out of his bounties, wow and amma as far as those people are concerned, allazina who istankafu disdain, wow and istakbaru pride themselves on it, so yu'azzibu will penalize, will punish them azaban aliman a painful with painful punishment. So as far those people who believe in Allah and do the good deeds are concerned, so Allah will complete their remunerations, their rewards, their awards, their wages, and will increase out of His bounty in their wages more than their dues. And as for those people are concerned who disdain and pride themselves on it, so Allah will punish them with the painful punishment. Wala and will never yajiduna find lahum for them min dunillahi other than God, other than Allah, waliyan any helper, waliyan any protector, wala nasiran and helper. And they will never find other than God any protector or any helper for them. Ya ayyuha, O annaso, the human being, the mankind, qad jaa has come to you, burhanun a conclusive evidence, a conclusive proof, mir rabbikum on behalf of your Lord, mir rabbikum on behalf of your Lord, wow and anzalna we have sent down ilaykum towards you, means to you, nuran a light, mubinan illuminating. O mankind, verily a conclusive proof or conclusive evidence has come to you on behalf of Allah, and we have sent down an illuminating light to you. So amma allazina amanu, as far as those people are concerned who amanu believe, illa in Allah, wa'tasamu and they grasp with Allah, wa'tasamu bihi and they try to protect themselves by means of Allah, so yudkhilu will put them them fi rahmatin minhu in His blessing, fi rahmatin minhu in His blessing, wow and fadlin His bounty, wow and yahdi will show them ilayhi towards Himself, siratan a way, mustaqiman straight. So as far as those people are concerned who believe in Allah and try to protect themselves by means of Allah, so Allah will admit them in His blessings and His bounties and will show them a straight way towards Himself. This is the verbal translation of the passage I recited before you. So it has got a very self-evident and quite obvious logical rationality with the previous passage. Because in the previous passage, it was stated that Jesus was obviously and completely a slave of Allah, whatever great he might have been, but he was a slave of Allah, a creature of Allah, a worshipper of Allah. He was a very big person, excellent person, abnormal person, very prominent person, but as being the slave of Allah, as being prophet of Allah. Since the Holy Prophet was talking to the delegation who had come from Najran in Yemen. So it was a Yemenite delegation who was conversing with Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ on behalf of the total Christianity of that time. The then Christianity was of the view that it was a great disgrace on behalf of the Prophet of Islam about Jesus, because they were believing in him as the Son of God. And this promulgation and announcement about Jesus as a slave of Allah was really, according to their ideology, a disgrace, a profanity, a sacrilege according to their ideology. They said that it was a bare and total personal contempt, personal libel. Therefore, they wanted Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ to apologize them because he has showed a profanity and he has committed the irreverence, and he should have apologized. But our Holy Prophet said on behalf of Allah, as it was revealed to him, لَن يَسْتَنْكِفَ الْمَسِيحُ أَن يَكُونَ عَبْدًا لِلَّهِ وَلَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. It is not a matter of discernment for Jesus to be the slave of Allah. To be slave of Allah is a quality, is a prominence, is an eminence, provided that it is accepted by God. لَن يَسْتَنْكِفَ الْمَسِيحُ أَن يَكُونَ عَبْدًا لِلَّهِ. O believer in Jesus, as a son of God, you are at fault. It is a great pride for Jesus to be accepted by God as a slave of Allah. And no one is and will be able to disdain the slavery of Allah. Slavery of Allah is a great pride. لَن يَسْتَنْكِفَ الْمَسِيحُ أَن يَكُونَ عَبْدًا لِلَّهِ. The Messiah, Jesus, will never disdain to be the slave of Allah. Even the angels, who were very prominent according to the then society, they were also very proud of being slave of Allah. The angels, who were very near to Allah, were very proud of being slave of Allah. So slavery of Allah is a matter of pride. It is not a matter of disgracement. Quran says, وَمَنْ يَسْتَنْكِفْ عَنْ عِبَادَتِهِ وَيَسْتَكْبِرْ فَسَيَحْشُرُهُمْ إِلَيْهِ جَمِيعًا. So it is highly culpable action for a person to to disdain the slavery of Allah. And whoever disdains the slavery of Allah, or he puts so much importance to himself that he prides himself on it, so he would be adduced, he would be produced in the court of Allah, and he would be judged by the judiciary of Allah. Means sooner or later you will be scrutinized and accountability would be held and you would be responsible to Allah. So it is a normal style of the expression of the Holy Quran that it mostly compares two types of expressions, two types of communities, two types of styles, characters, beliefs, ideologies, parties, just to make them clear. So clarity of a meaning requires a full comparison. Since the disbelief of the Christianity was discussed in the previous lines, therefore in the coming lines the people who believe in Allah properly had to be discussed. So accordingly, the true believers were also discussed in these lines. Quran says, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, as far as those people are concerned who properly believe in Allah and do the righteous deeds, فَيُوَفِّيهِمْ أُجُورَهُمْ, their rewards, awards, remunerations and wages will be fully paid, and in addition to that, the bounties of Allah will also be bestowed upon them out of His bounty, out of His blessing. Means the equity of law, the adequacy of justice requires the full payment of the remuneration. But as far as additional payment is concerned, it is not against the judiciary, but it is it concerns with the benevolence. So benevolence is not against the justice. It is not injustice, but it is a generosity. وَيَزِيدُهُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, Allah will not suffice to the payment of their full remunerations, but it would be added out of the bounties of Allah. Allah says, وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْتَنْكَفُوا وَاسْتَكْبَرُوا فَيُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا, as the good doers, the true believers, would be paid properly and would duly be dealt with. The people who disdain the slavery of Allah and pride themselves on it, they will be punished according to the severity of their behavior. The more wrong they do, the more severe punishment will be inflicted upon them. وَلَا يَجِدُونَ لَهُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا, but as far as their idols and their idolatry is concerned, will be of no use, will be totally in vain. They will never be able to find any helper or protector in the field of Judgment Day other than God. It is only God who can protect and who can help. Are the persons who would be authorized by Allah, just like the intercession would be granted to Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ and the other prophets, but they are not other than God, but they are on behalf of the God. So applications of these types of verses would not be on the prophets or the pious personalities, but because this is not absolute statement, but this is restricted with the condition of other than God. They are not other than God, they are not against than God, because other than God is mostly used on the opposite parties. They are not opposite parties to Allah, but they are the parties of Allah. They would be on behalf of Allah, and the right of intercession would be delegated to them, as it was expressed by the Holy Quran himself. By Quran itself, Quran says, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى, Allah will give you so much that you will be pleased. Our Holy Prophet says, Wallahi izan qatula arda wa wahidu min ummati finnar. If the situation is so, means if my players were necessitated by Allah that I will be necessarily be pleased at the time of Judgment Day, I will never be pleased unless the loss of my follower is admitted to the paradise. If any one of my followers is in the hell, I will never be pleased. So the case was decided by Allah. Everything was determined. So the ground of the intercession is not against this verse. This verse, it was used against the disbelievers, against the infidels. And Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radhiyallahu anhu was reported in Bukhari Sharif that a person who applies the verses revealed against the infidels in favor of the Muslims, that would be the worst person in the society who will apply the verses revealed against the infidels against the Muslims. Means the verses revealed against the infidels would be restricted to the infidels. That would be those would be used against the infidels. Those verses will never be applied on the Muslims. So this is the worst way of the commentary of the Holy Quran. The exegetical commentary highly condemns this way of statement or explanation. As being a good and accurate commentator, one has to follow the principles explained by the previous peoples. So it was already decided that a verse revealed against the infidels cannot be utilized against the Muslims. So this verse that they will never be able to find any protector or any helper was revealed against the infidels. This verse cannot be applied on the Muslims. Our Holy Prophet says, Shafa'ati li'al al-kabairi min ummati. My intercession is also applicable to the worst persons of my followers. Persons who has committed the highest sins will also deserve my intercession on account of believing in me, because believing in Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam will never be in vain. It will be fruitful. It is a disgrace for the Holy Prophet that the belief in Muhammad Mustafa alaihi wasallam should be in vain. So it is a disgrace. Quran says, Ya ayyuhan nas. Here, Quran Azim. Here, Quran Azim diverts the style of its expression. Quran says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, kad ja'akum burhanun min rabbikum wa anzalna alaykum nuran mubina. Quran Azim very nicely says, O people, this is a permanent rule of address that the people are mostly addressed with whom the topic is concerned. For instance, I say, oh, young boys. It means that the range of application of my speech is young boys. I say, oh Muslims, it means that my expression is concerning with the Muslims. When Quran says, oh people, without any condition of belief, without any condition of Islam, or without any condition of any other restriction, means this address is not limited, is not confined to the Muslims, but it is useful for all of the societies. They may concern the Muslim.
This word is used for the whole world.
For all the world, all the world. This absolute address, absolute means without any restriction. So we will have to consider the matter, what nature it has got. Quran says, Ya Yuhannas, qad ja'akum burhanun min rabbikum. O people, a conclusive evidence has come to you. Burhan is a terminological word. Logically, Burhan can be defined. Al-Burhan ma yalzamu bil ilmi bil ilmu ila al-madlul. When you know some things, the knowledge of that thing necessitates to know another thing conclusively. The first thing, the former will be called Burhan. Just you see the sun is shining on the wall. The light of sun is also called sun. When you see the sun on the wall, you can imagine that such type of light is not possible without the rising of the sun. When you calculate, when you estimate, when you evaluate the existence of the sun from the sun shining on the wall, so this type of knowledge would be called Burhan. Understand? Ma yalzamu bil ilmi bihil ilmu ila al-madlul. When you know something, on account of that knowledge, you necessarily reach to another knowledge. The former would be called Burhan. Here, our Holy Prophet was named as Burhan. Means when you know Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, you will necessarily know God. Burhanun mir rabbikum. Our Holy Prophet is a Burhan, a conclusive evidence of Allah. So, it was said in the answer to the Christianity, because Christianity was discussed in the previous lines, that Jesus was such and such persons. He has got miraculous qualities. He had got many miracles. So the Christianity of the then society said that if he had got so many miracles, that he was able to revive the dead bodies, he was able to cure the patient of leprosy and many other diseases. So these qualities are totally abnormal, unprecedented in the human society, which proves that, which substantiates that he was son of God, or he was component part of God. Quran says these types of miracles are also called Burhan. He has got Burhan, but he himself was not Burhan. His puff of inflammation was a Burhan. His touching was a Burhan. But he has got a few Burhans, the conclusive evidences to God. He has got miracles. But our Holy Prophet, from top to bottom, his pose, his fingers, his hands, his skin, his hair, his tongue, his teeth, his toes, his shoes, the dust falling on his shoes is also miracle. He is from top to bottom a collection of miracles. He himself is miracle. So when a person has a few miracles, can be called, God forbid, son of God. So what is your opinion about a person who is from top to bottom a collection of numerous and endless and uncounted miracles? What is your opinion about that? So this person, the Holy Prophet, when he indicates towards moon, it's split into two pieces. when he commands, sun comes back from the west, when he orders, the trees begin to run. When he comes, the Kaaba Sharif begins to dance. When his name is enunciated, or his name is announced, the idols of Kaaba Sharif fall down. So his name, so his superficial value, his apparent value, his internal value, his physical value, his spiritual value, his everything is miracle. He is a collection from top to bottom. He himself is miracle. So he is a Burhan. Burhanun min Rabbikum means when you know Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, you will have to know Allah. And when you cannot know Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, you will never be able to know Allah. This is why all of Sufia meditates upon themselves, upon their shuyukhs. But through Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, they believe that the beam of light comes from the throne of Allah directly to Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. And then through their lineage come to their sheikh. And from their sheikh to the chest of a person who meditates. All of the principles of meditations ends on Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, because no blessing of Allah come to the creature without virtue of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. Everything comes to the creature by virtue of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. They had got a few numbers of miracles, but he himself from top to bottom is a miracle. Quran says, Ya ayyuhan nas, qad ja'akum burhanun min rabbikum. They had got a few number of miracles, but he himself from top to bottom is a collection of embodiment of a miracles. Therefore, he is a conclusive evidence of Allah. So it is a principle that when a case is under trial, the circumstantial evidence and presumptive evidences are discussed and the case goes forward. And the case is discussed and further investigations are made. But when a conclusive evidence is adduced and submitted in the court, then the case is automatically stops and is decided. Because the investigations in the courts made for the case are just to determine the facts and figures and know the real situation of the case. But when a conclusive evidence is produced in the court, then there is no any further need for the investigation, because the further investigation is just made for knowledge of the facts, and all of the facts were shown, were known just by the adducement of a conclusive evidence. So after the submission of a conclusive evidence, no case can be further discussed. So the case of divinity of God, the case of deity was in the society being discussed. But when Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam was adduced in the human court according to the procedure of the justice and judicature, the case should have been decided. The case of divinity was decided, because our Holy Prophet was the last and final evidence of God, divinity. So according to this principle, Mirza Qadiani and his followers automatically stand infidels, because when the case of divinity was discussed and the conclusive evidence by means of Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ was adduced in the court, so there was no any further need for the discussion of the case. So in this meaning, our Holy Prophet was referred to here as Burhan. Burhanum min rabbikum wa anzalna ilaykum nuran mubina. Ya ayyuhan nasu qad ja'akum burhanun min rabbikum wa anzalna ilaykum nuran mubina. And the Holy Quran is a Burhan, and the Holy Prophet is a Burhan, and the Quran is Nuri Mubina, illuminating light. Means the Quran will introduce the Holy Prophet, and the Holy Prophet will explain the contents of the Holy Quran. Quran says, أَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَاعْتَصَمُوا بِهِ فَسَيُدْخِلُهُمْ فِي رَحْمَةٍ مِّنْهُ وَفَضْلٍ وَيَهْدِيهِمْ إِلَيْهِ صِرَاطًا مُسْتَقِيمًا. As far as those people are concerned who believe in Allah and grasp Him to protect themselves, so Allah Kareem will admit them in His blessing and in His bounties, and will show them a straight way to Himself. Means when everything became obvious and everything was cleared, so everybody's duty is to accept it. So whosoever accepted will be rewarded by Allah, and this is the proper way shown by Allah going towards Allah. So this is the end of my lecture up to today in English language. If anybody likes to put a question, is fully allowed and will be appreciated. Is there any question? No question. चलिए दुआ कीजिए. Surah number 4 and verse number 177. The last and final verse of Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4. Allah Kareem says, Yastaftunaka, they ask you to give prediction. Istafta, yastafti, istifta'an, to demand for prediction. They demand you for a prediction about the legacy of childless, issueless person. Kul, say, Allahu, Allah who is yuftikum, gives you the prediction. Yuftikum afta yufti ifta means to give the verdict, to give the legal decision. Istafta yastafti ifta means to ask for verdict. Afta yufti ifta means to give the verdict, legal opinion or legal decision. Yuftikum gives you the verdict fil kalala about the legacy of the issueless person, the childless person, who doesn't leave any child behind him. If imru'un, a person, halaka, dies away, laysa lahu waladun, and there is no child for him. Laysa lahu waladun, and there is no child for him. He is issueless, childless person. Wow, and lahu for him is ukhtun, a sister. Falaha, so for her, is nisfu, half of ma taraka, which has been left behind that person. Half of the total property of the deceased person. Wahuwa, and he, means that childless person will inherit. Yare soha, will inherit her, means will inherit his sister. Illam yakul laha waladun, if there is no son for her. So, if kanata, they are, means the sisters, if the sisters are, isnatani, two or more than two, is the minimum limit of the number of sisters. Falahuma, so there is for them, and for those two sisters, as-sulusane, 2/3 of mimma, what taraka, he has left behind him. So if there are two, so there is 2/3 of total legacy, total inheritance of what he has left behind him. Wow, and in if kanu, they are ikhwatan, many sisters and brothers, rijalam wa nisa'an, males and females. Rijalan is plural number of rajul, means males, wa nisa'an, and females. Waso liz zakari, there is for a male, mislo, equal, hazil, the share, al unsayan, of two girls. If they are more than two and they are brothers and sisters, they are males and females, so there is a share equal of two sisters for a brother, for a male. Yubayyinullahu lakum, explains Allah. Allah explains lakum, for you, to you. Antadillu, this is called maf'ul muhazzar in Arabic grammar, which can be interpreted as lest you should astray, lest you should be deviated. Allah Rabbul Izzat explains everything to you lest you should deviate, you should go astray. Wallahu, Allah Rabbul Izzat, Wallahu, and Allah Rabbul Izzat, bikulli shay, about everything, alim, is all knowledge. Allah has a comprehensive knowledge of everything. They asked you for prediction about the issueless person. So say Allah gives you the legal opinion or legal decision or prediction about the issueless person, about the childless person. So if a person dies away when he does not leave behind him a son and he has got a sister, so she will get the half of the total property which has been left over by the deceased person. وَهُوَ يَرِثُهَا إِن لَّمْ يَكُن لَّهَا وَلَدٌ. And he will also inherit her if she dies and she doesn't leave any son behind her or any issue behind her. So if they are more than two, so there is 2/3 of total property for them out of what has been left by the deceased person. وَإِنْ كَانُوا إِخْوَةً رِجَالٌ وَنِسَاءٌ فَلِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ. So if they are more than 2 males and females, so there is a share equal to 2 sisters for a male. Allah Rabbul Izzat explains everything to you lest you should go astray, and Allah is all knowing about everything. This is a supplement of the law of legacy. Law of legacy was discussed in the beginning chapters of the Surah, and all of the details concerning with the commonplace issues were discussed over here. And this type of question arose after many years in the court of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. So it was answered by means of this verse. And background of and occasion of the revelation of this verse is, once upon a time, our holy person, our holy prophet, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, was reported to have gone to somewhere to see a sick person. When he was sitting beside him, so he began to ask Muhammad Mustafa. He was dying, and he was leaving no son or daughter behind him. Therefore, his property was going to be left without heir. Then after the prediction from Holy Prophet, Quran refers to the same event. Quran says, Yastaftunak, they asked you for the prediction of an issueless person, and that person was Jabir radiyallahu ta'ala. Jabir Madina. He was a Medinan companion of the Holy Prophet, and he was on the point of death. And as a precaution, he wanted to know the real situation, the real Islamic situation of his personal issue. He wanted to know about the legacy, because he was a very rich person and he had got a large property from the houses and lands and properties, movable and immovable properties. Therefore, he wanted to know the situation. Quran says, "Qulillahu yuftikum fil kalala." Oh my holy prophet, tell the people, Allah gives you the prediction about the childless person. Means if a person who is childless, who has got no son, no daughter, and no issue, and he is dying away, his property will be dealt with as follows. إِنِّي مُرُؤٌ هَلَكَ لَيْسَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ وَلَهُ أُخْتٌ فَلَهَا نِصْفُ مَا تَرَكَ. If a person dies away when he has got no child, no daughter, no son, and he has got a sister وَلَهَا نِصْفُ مَا تَرَكَ. His sister will inherit half of the total property. So it is quite clear. If Zaid dies away, and Zaid has got no son, no daughter, and he has got only one sister with the name of Zainab, Zainab will inherit the half of the total property of Zaid.
Other half. What about the other half?
Yes. There are three types of relatives according to Islamic distribution. Residuaries, consanguinities, and affinities. Residuaries means the persons who are relative by means of father, through father, but their share was not discussed in the text of Holy Quran. Their share was not fixed by the Holy Quran. They are called residuary. Residuary are also heirs, but they will take all of the property which would be left over after the distribution to the people who are shareholders, whose shares were discussed. Understand? And consanguinities. Consanguinities are the relatives which are relative through the mother. They are called consanguinities. And the relatives who are related by means of marriage, they are called affinities. In case one has got a sister and no issue, no daughter, no son, when the half of total property is handed over to his sister, all of the rest property go to the residuaries. Understand? وَهُوَ يَرِثُهَا إِن لَّمْ يَكُن لَّهَا وَلَدٌ. In case a sister dies and she has got no son, no daughter, in such a case, her brother will inherit half of the total property of that deceased woman. In case certain property is left over after the taking one half of the total property by her brother, we will see if there is any other person whose share was discussed, just like husband, mother, father. If there is no one, all of the property would be inherited by that very person, because he has got two positions. He is shareholder as well, and he is residuary as well, because he is brother of that deceased woman, and he is her brother through his father. Therefore, he is residuary as well. After taking the prescribed share, he will also inherit total of the property, because all the deserving persons are missing there. Islam is very, very complicated. Our Holy Prophet was reported to have said, Al-Mirasu nisfu ilm. Only the law of legacy is a complete half of the total Islam. A complete half of the total Islam. Therefore, the scholars of law of legacy are found in very rare number in the world. But this law is very comprehensive one. وَهُوَ يَرِثُهَا إِن لَّمْ يَكُن لَّهَا وَلَدٌ فَإِنْ كَانَتْ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُمَا الثُّلُثَانِ مِمَّا تَرَكَ. If a person dies away and he has got no son, no daughter, and he has got two sisters, so they will inherit 2/3 of the total property of the deceased.
Instead of half, because 2/3.
Yes, because their number was increased, therefore their share was also increased. But if there is no any other residuary, since those sisters are the shareholder as well, their shares were prescribed by the Holy Quran, therefore they would be considered to be the shareholders. But after taking their share, when it was checked, there was no any other heir, therefore they will inherit total of the property as being residuaries. وَإِنْ كَانُوا إِخْوَةً رِجَالًا وَنِسَاءً وَلِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. But in the previous line, the two sisters were discussed. Means if they are more than two, the same principle would be applied upon them. Means they would be shareholder in 2/3 of the total property. In case of missing the other residuaries, they would be considered and they would be dealt with as the residuary as well, and they will inherit the total property. But if they are more than two and they are from the different qualities, means sisters and brothers, the fundamental principle will be applied upon them. Means لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. Every person, every male will inherit equal to two females. For instance, there is 1 rupee to be distributed. So the two sisters would inherit 1/4 of a rupee, and jointly they would inherit half of the rupee, and half of the rupee would be inherited by one brother. The same principle would be applied in more than 2 or 3 or 4. There may be 1 dozen, but the same principle would be applied. According to the same principle, their legacy would be distributed. Quran says, وَإِنْ كَانُوا إِخْوَةً رِجَالٌ وَنِسَاءٌ. If they are mixed as brothers and sisters, males and females, فَلِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. So there is a share for a male equal to those of 2 females. So Allah Rabbul Izzat explains every kind of issues to you, lest you should be deviated, you should astray. Means He wants just to protect you from the deviation. Wallahu bikulli shay'in alim. And this matter is a policy matter, and this matter is concerning with the external and internal situations, and all of the situations are quite obvious and self-evident to Allah. Allah knows everything properly, therefore He is able to deal with all things properly. So this is the end of my lecture on this, on the commentary of the Holy Quran in English language. Now I would like to know the questions by you. If anybody would like to put a question, it would be appreciated and would be encouraged.
What if the dying person leaves a debt? If the person dying leaves a debt as regards to the...
The verse number 10 starts from here. يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ فَإِنْ كُنَّ نِسَاءً فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُنَّ ثُلُثَا مَا تَرَكَ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ وَاحِدَةً فَلَهَا النِّصْفُ وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. Here. مِمَّا تَرَكَ إِنْ كَانَ الْأُوَلُ. If a person has got sons and daughters, and he dies, and he leaves behind him his parents. So, وَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. So every one of them, means mother and father, will take 1/6 of the total property. Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4, and verse number 10 would discuss this issue. If you want to know this chapter, you must study this chapter again, and if you find any kind of difficulty, you can contact me. This was written in the text. وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ مِمَّا تَرَكَ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. If a person dies away, leaving behind him a son, his parents would inherit 1/6 of the total property each. Every one of them would take 1/6 of the total property independently. Means each of them would take 1/6 of the total property. This is the answer to your question.
What happens if he borrow money from somebody and he dies?
Yes. Our Holy Prophet says, Man mata wa taraka dayn wa taraka daynun wa lam yutruk qada'an falyatini falayya qada'u. Our Holy Prophet says, if a person takes the money and while passing away, while dying away, he doesn't leave any kind of property to be given in the loan, in the returning the loan, his payment is on me. I would pay. According to Islamic law, the Islamic government would be responsible for the payment of that loan. This is the distinction and eminence of Islamic law. Understand? On the other hand, our Holy Prophet says, if man mata wa taraka daynun wa lam yutruk qada'an falyadni fa'alayhi qada'u. I shall pay his loan, his debts, his payments. But man mata wa taraka kallan mata wa taraka daynun wa lam yutruk qada'an falyadni فإن ترك مالا فلورثته أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. If he leaves the property behind him, his heirs would inherit it. Means his property would be inherited by his heirs. But if he passes away and he leaves behind him the children, orphans, while leaving nothing to be paid in the loan, I shall be responsible for his children as well, for his payment as well. So this is the distinction of Islamic law. His payment, the payment of that money would be the responsibility of the Islamic State. The chief of the Islamic State would be responsible to pay the money. Is there any other question? No, please.
And why is it that the man gets twice as much as a woman?
Pardon?
What is the reason behind the man
Yes.
getting twice as much as a lady?
Really, this question is concerned with feminism. Really, the principle about the distribution of legacy is responsibility, rights and obligations are distributed among the society proportionally. When the duties of a person are less, his share in property is less. When the responsibility of a person in the society are more, his share would be more. Understand? Since the responsibility of a woman in the Islamic societies are less, therefore her share is less. And the responsibility of a man are more than the woman, therefore his share is a bit higher. The duplication of rights is inextricably woven together with the duplication of the responsibility. Labor and remunerations are go along with each other. If a person labors for 8 hours, he will take the remuneration for 8 hours. And if a person labors for 4 hours, he will take the remuneration for 4 hours. Since the labor of a man is more than the fifth surah is going to be started. Surah Al-Ma'idah. Surah number 5, verse number 1. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود أحلت لكم بهيمة الأنعام إلا ما يتلى عليكم غير محل الصيد وأنتم حرم إن يحكم ما يريد يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحلوا شعائر الله ولا الشهر الحرام ولا الهدي ولا القلائد ولا آمين البيت الحرام ولا آمين البيت الحرام يبتغون فضلا من ربهم ورضوانا وإذا حللتم فاصطادوا ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم أن صدوكم عن المسجد الحرام أن تعتدوا وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسول النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O believers, awfu, observe, bil uqud, promises and treaties. O believers, keep your promises and your treaties. Uhillat, were made lawful, lakum for you, bahimatul an'ami, cattle-like animals. Bahimatul an'am, cattle-like animals. Illa ma, with the exception of what yutla will be recited, will be told to you, alaykum, to you, with the exception of what would be recited before you or which would be told to you. غَيْرَ مُحِلِّ الصَّيْدِ, when you are not believing to be lawful the tribe, the animals which are hunted, tribe, P-R-E-Y, tribe. وَأَنْتُمْ حُرُمْ, when you are in case of ihram, when you are wearing the clothes of pilgrimage. Inna Allah, verily Allah is, Allah yahkumu, orders, commands, ma yurid, whatever He pleases, whatever He likes. O believers, keep your promises, observe your treaties and promises. The cattle-like animals were legitimatized, were made lawful to you, with the exception of what would be told to you when you are not believing to be lawful the pride, especially the pride of wild pride. because marine prey are lawful, as we discussed in the coming lines, here and after. وَأَنْتُمْ طُرُمْ, when you are in the clothes of the pilgrims. Verily Allah ordains whatever He pleases. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ya ayyuha, O allazina, those people amanu who believe. O people who believe. La tuhillu sha'air Allah, don't violate. Here tuhillu from ahalla yuhillu ihlalan means violation of the reverence, respect of something. Don't interfere, don't disrespect, don't commit the sacrilege, don't blaspheme, don't blaspheme. Here, ihlal means to blaspheme, to disrespect, to interfere, to neglect the reverence, respect of some respectful thing, sacred thing, just like name of Allah or celestial books. Violation of the respect is called sacrilege. Irreverence, sacrilege, blasphemy, these are most famous words. Sha'air Allah, sha'air, the eminences, the symbols of Allah. In terminological language, they are called eminences. Eminences are emblems, E-M-B-L, E-M, emblems are eminence. These two words are patent and most terminological. Sha'air Allah, the eminences, the symbols of Allah, emblems, the eminences, just like Kaabatullah, Hajar Aswad, Maqam Ibrahim, these sacred places, just like the shrine of Sayyid al-Qadir Jilani Rahmatullah, Safa Marwa in the Safa wal Marwa min Sha'airullah. These are the emblems, eminences, symbols of Allah, which make one remember Allah. These are symbols of Allah. وَلَا تُحِلُّ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ, don't violate, don't disrespect, don't interfere the eminences, the emblems of Allah, وَلَا الشَّهْرَ الْحَرَامِ, and nor the respectable, inviolable months, وَلَا الْهَدْيَ, and nor the animals dedicated for the sacrification. Sacrifices means. وَلَا الْهَدْيَ. Al-Hadi is a sacrifice which is sent to Haram Sharif. A common sacrifice is not called Hadi. That is called Dahiyya. وَلَا الْقَلَائِدَ, and not the colored ones, means the animals which are symbolized with certain symbols, just as a sign to have been sent to Haram Sharif. وَلَا آمِينَ الْبَيْتَ الْحَرَامِ, and not the people who are intending to go to Haram Sharif. Means the people going to Haram Sharif should not be disturbed. يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ, when they are seeking the blessing of Allah, وَرِضْوَانَ, and His pleasure. وَإِذَا, and when حَلَلْتُمْ, you come out of the pilgrim clothes. Halal here means to come out of the clothes of pilgrims. Need to open the ihram. This is called halal. In the previous lines, tuhillu means don't violate, don't blaspheme, here means when you come out of the clothes of pilgrim. Fastadu, you hunt, means you are allowed to hunt. This order is for permissibility. This is not for the necessity. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ, and should not incite you what? Shana'anu qawmin, the enmity of a community, ansaddukum anil masjid al-haram. What is that enmity? That they had debarred you, they had prevented you, they have retained you from the mosque of respect, respectable, inviolable mosque, who had prevented you from the inviolable mosque. Anta'adu, to transgress against them, means the enmity of a people, of a community who had prevented you from the inviolable mosque should not incite you to transgress against them. وَتَعَامَنُوا, and cooperate, عَلَى الْبِرِّ, in the goodness, in the virtue, in the piety. وَالتَّقْوَى, the piety. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, and don't cooperate in the sin and the transgression. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and fear God. Inna Allah, verily Allah is Shadidul Iqab, very severe in the punishment, in the chastisement, in the retribution. O believers, don't violate the eminences, the emblems of Allah, and nor the inviolable or respectable months, and nor the animals sent for the sacrification, and nor the collared animal as a symbol of the sacrification at the altar of Mina. وَلَا آمِنَ الْبَيْتَ الْحَرَامِ, and nor the people going to the respectable house, respectable mosque, means Kaaba Sharif. يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنَ رَبِّهِمْ وَرِضْوَانًا, who are seeking for the blessing of their Lord and His pleasure. And when you come out of the pilgrim's clothes, you are allowed to come. And the envy of a community who had prevented you from the inviolable mosque should not incite you to transgress against them. And cooperate in virtue, in goodness, and in piety, and don't cooperate in sin and transgression, and fear Allah. Verily, Allah is very severe, very strict in the punishment, in the chastisement, in the retribution. This is the verbal translation of the passage I recite for you. This surah is entitled with the name of Maida. Maida means a tablecloth whereon the foods are furnished to have. Since the tablecloth of the Christians were discussed in the text of this surah, therefore this surah was entitled in the name of Al-Ma'idah. And the issue of that tablecloth will be discussed at a proper place when we reach there. And the time of its revelation is just after the compromise of Hudaybiyah. in the 5th year of Hijrah. Therefore, many topics, many issues relevant with that treaty were also discussed in the text of the Surah. And most prominent issues of the Surahs are the keeping of the promise and the light in Torah, in Evangel, in Gospel. Torah and Injil were especially discussed in this Surah. Since in those days, the people of the book were the addressee of most addresses of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. Mostly our Holy Prophet had to address them. Since their books were also approved by Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam as the celestial and divine books, their divinity was authenticated by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. Therefore, they were encouraged. They were very happy that their books were approved by a new religion as well. And especially the Christians were very happy because the slander imposed by the Jews against Virgin Mary was also justified. And it was told that the virginity of Virgin Mary was a true fact, and there was nothing happened with Sayyidah Maryam in respect of her chastity. She was completely chaste, innocent, and she was a pious lady. There were all the slanders and accusations imposed against her were baseless, and she was totally purified and a very sacred woman. So it contributed very much to the Christianity, because all of the Jews were of opinion that she had committed the adultery, and they were openly discussing the issue in the open places, and there was no source provided with the Christians to debar them or to prevent them. So when the statement by the Holy Prophet was made in the open grounds and Islam began to prevail, all of the surrounding areas and all the localities, the statements of Muhammad Mustafa were contributing to the Christianity. So in such a way, they began to feel a pride that they were very prominent persons. They were called as people of book, is qualified, literary persons, scholars. It was a great prominent title in those societies when all of the Meccan society was named as Ummiyin, means illiterate persons. Out of those, the Jews and Christians were named, were called, were addressed as people of the book. It was a great eminence, a great dignity for those people. And in addition to that, the light and proper guidance were also referred to in Gospel and in Torah. But in the meantime, it was discussed that that light was misused, that proper guidance was violated, with the result that all of the Christianity and Judaism deviated from the proper path. And it was really an alarm for the Muslims as well, that when the light sent down by Allah in Torah and Gospel was violated and the proper guidance revealed by Allah in those two books were not properly observed, with the conclusion that all of the followers of those lights and guidance were believed to have been deviated, you are also running a risk of being deviation. Because if you misuse the light and the proper guidance, you will have the same conclusion, the same result. So the Muslims were warned against the misuse of light and guidance. And it was started from the ethical aspect. These O believers, now it is identity of the Jews to break the promise. And they say it is just a change of mind. So this is impure, pure dishonesty to break the promise. But it was introduced in them as a term of changing of mind. Quran says it is not changing of mind, it is just dishonesty. It is just misuse of the human statement. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu awfu bil uqud. Your identity is to keep the promise. Irrespective of any Muslim or any Christian or any Jew or any infidel or any pagan, whoever one may be, but you are dutiful, you are duty bound to keep the promise. Wherever you, wherever you, with anyone you make a promise, your duty is to observe your promise. And other meaning was also referred to by the different Muslim commentators, that here the title of Ya ayyuhallazina amanu was used for the Christians and Judaism, or the Christianity and Judaism, because they were believers of the previous books. Means, O people who were named believers in the previous books, you have made a promise. You have made a promise through your prophets to believe in Muhammad Mustafa, because this promise was made for many times through Jesus and through Moses. May grace and peace of Allah be upon them, that all of their followers would be duty bound to believe in the coming prophet Muhammad. May grace and peace of Allah be upon him. So according to that promise, they were duty bound to believe in Muhammad Mustafa. By means of, by virtue of this verse, they were made remember that, O believers, according to your own presumption, you presume yourself as a believer. If you are true believer according to your presumption, you have made a promise. In respect to Muhammad Mustafa to believe in him. So it is time to believe in him. Keep your promise. Means believe in Muhammad Mustafa. Now, it was a Medina life where the lawful and unlawful, legitimate and illegitimate, right and wrong, and sin and virtue, and darkness and light, everything was differentiated, was cleared. So it was a time to provide the instructions about the daily activities. Nobody can avoid eating and drinking. Therefore, it was first and foremost important to discuss the lawful and unlawful. Lawful and unlawful. Quran says, "Uhillat lakum bahimatul an'am." All of the cattle-like animals were made lawful for you, were legitimatized for you, with the exception of those which would be discussed hereinafter. So the list of those animals is in the coming chapter. You will find it inshallah. Means all of the cattle-like animals were legitimatized, were made lawful for you. Meaning you can slaughter them according to Islamic instructions, and then you can have their flesh. Illa ma yutla alaykum, except those ones which we discussed to you afterwards. Ghayra Muhallis said, and there is another restriction. In addition to being the category of an animal, means your own category would also be considered. If you are in the clothes of the pilgrims, you are not allowed to hunt anything. But the praise which are called marine, means living in the ocean, the water, they are lawful. That will be discussed in the coming lines. Just like deer, here, and birds, you are not allowed to hunt them when you are in the clothes of a pilgrim. In case of ihram, Ghayra Muhallis said, means you are other than a person who is believing the praise to be lawful. Means you are not allowed to believe them to be lawful. Even if they are lawful, you are competent to hunt them. But since you are in clothes of the pilgrims, therefore you are not allowed to hunt them. There is not only one reason for the illegitimacy of an animal. Sometimes animal itself is illegitimate, unlawful, haram. And sometimes the animal is lawful, legitimate, but the person who is going to hunt them is not allowed for some reason, and on account of his personal condition, the animal would be illegitimate for him. And sometimes he himself is in right position, but the animal is in area of Haram Sharif. One cannot hunt them. The animals standing or grazing or moving or sleeping or sitting or standing in the area of Haram Sharif, which is called protected area. Sanctuaries. The protected areas are divided into two parts, Himam and Haram. These are two different categories. But that can be termed, the Haram Sharif can be termed as sanctuary, and the other additional area is called Himam, which can be called protected area. When they are in the prescribed area of sanctuaries, Haram Sharif, they are not allowed for anybody. He may be out of the clothes of pilgrims as well. وَأَنْتُمْ حُرُمْ, when you are in ihram, in the clothes of pilgrims. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَحْكُمُ مَا يُرِيدُ. So here Allah Rabbul Izzat refers to the power of sovereignty of himself. Means nobody can ask why, what, for which reason. I am God. I have got an exclusive right to order whatever I like, wherever I like, about whomever I like. I can make a decision. Inna Allah yahkum ma yurid. Allah orders whatever He pleases. Means all of the animals which were legitimatized or illegitimatized, and certain restrictions were made, or certain limitations were lifted over, all of the things done or omitted by Allah cannot be questioned about. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuhillu sha'air Allah. The previous question was concerning with eating, but here The lawful and unlawful is concerning with the action. Just like eating and drinking is lawful and unlawful, in the same way, the actions are lawful and unlawful, valid or invalid. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la tuhillu sha'airallah. O believers, here the two Muslims are admittedly addressing of this verse. O believers, you are not allowed to violate, to revere the emblems, the eminences of Allah. Quran says, "Inna safa wal marwata min sha'airillah." As being Muslim, one is duty bound to pay respect to those stones, to those grass, to those pebbles, to those rocks which are found in the area of Safa and Marwa. When they are not God, not prophet, not wali, not companion of the prophet, not mosque, nothing. But they are just stones, pebbles, grass, sand, but they are respectable. Why? They have got an attribution, ascription, a relation. They were ascribed, they were attributed, they were believed to have been related to the pious persons. Means even if stones or sands or grass or common or trifles are ascribed, are fathered, are attributed to respectable, to reverend, to pious personalities, would be respected. Just like we respect a tree, an area, we say that this area is very sacred. This concerning with the sanctuary of this khanqa, this shrine. Just like our Holy Prophet was reported to have said, Mecca and its surroundings were made haram by Allah, and I made Medina and its surroundings haram by myself, because they are surrounding areas, suburban areas of the shrine of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu. So, if anything, directly or indirectly, is related to the sacred persons, respectable persons, or reverend people, respectable people, according to Islamic ideology, the things attributed to them would also be treated like them. In Safa Marwa was attributed to Sayyida Hajra. Just like Sayyida Hajra herself is respectable, all the stones, pebbles, grass and sands ascribed to her are also respectable like that. Like her. So when the sand, the stones, the trees, the pebbles, the grass, everything ascribed or fathered to the respectable persons would be respected like the respectable persons. So what is your opinion about those women who were ascribed to Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam? Through the relation of marriage or through the relation of blood? Would be respectable or not? Of course, they would be respectable. And all of the animals, the shoes, the clothes, all of the things were believed to be respectable. Just like Sayyidina Aisha says, this is the shirt of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. He used to wear it during his life. But when he passed away, I possessed it. Whenever a person falls ill, I wash it. And the water used for it I make the patient drink it, and he is cured. So that shot is also sha'airillah. Inna safa wal marwa min sha'airillah. So in the same way, the shrine of Sayyid al-Qadir Jilani Rahmatullah, the shrine of Khwaja Gharib Nawaz Sultan Hind Sarkar, the shrine of Dada bin Bakshari Al-Miri, the shrine of Sheikh Shahid Sobri, the shrine of Sayyid Bahauddin Naqshband Bukhari, all of these shrines would fall under the category of this one. If a person takes a stone from here and throws it in the area of Haram Sharif, what would be the category of that stone? The same stone which was taken from here to there would be included in Haram Sharif and would be respected alike. So this is the meaning of attribution or ascription or fatheration. Wal-Ashhar al-Haram, and the months of respect, inviolable months should also be respected. Which are those months? Zilqa'dah, Zilhajjah, Muharram Sharif, and Rajab Sharif. These 4 months were believed to be respected, reverent, sacred, and their sacredness, their reverence, their reverence was not violated in the time of ignorance as well, before Islam. Before the introduction of Islam, the period is called age of ignorance. Age of ignorance, which is mostly termed as Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means before introduction of Islam. The period of ignorance, the time of ignorance, these 4 months used to be respected. And the same customary law was legalized by Islam. So this is a proof for any new thing. When any new thing introduced to society is not repugnant to the fundamental or express provisions of Islamic law, would be legalized. In this time, the Gyarvi Sharif, which was introduced after the introduction of Islam, but it was not repugnant to the fundamental law or express provisions of Islamic law, but it was according and totally correspondent with the spirit of Islamic law, and such examples were also found and experienced by the Islamic Muslims in the previous time. Therefore, it was legalized. And any new thing which is going to be introduced in the coming time would be legalized or illegitimatized according to the same principle. Because Islam has got a principle for the recognitions or rejection of the new things. If the new thing corresponds to the previous lawful things, would be legalized, and everything having got the repugnancy with the lawful things would be rejected. This is the principle which would be followed up to the dawn of the judgment day. Wal-Hadi, and those animals are also respectable. Which one? Which have been sent to Kaaba Sharif. Just like a person buys an animal from Medina Tayyibah for the sacrification in the altar of Mina. But there is another herd of animals going to Mecca Sharif, and he himself is waiting for his group. A group will prepare and go by a wagon, and wagon is expected to go after 10 days. But the animals will take more than 10 days to go Mecca, and they hire a person to look after the animals, and he include his animal with the other herd, and they go. And during the journey, if a person happened to see those animals which were sent to Mecca with the intention of sacrification, he has got no right to disturb them, to interfere them, because those animals are respectable. When they are animals are not respectable, one can blow with them, one can draw the water with them, one can load them with the lures. But here, he is not allowed to take any kind of service from them, when they are totally submissive. And the person who was looking after that herd is not allowed to rent them during the journey. He cannot rent them for the plowing, for the watering, for the irrigation, for the other services, because those animals are respectable. Why are they respectable? When they are animal, the answer is they were ascribed to Haram Sharif. When a common animal carries the respect, when it is attributed to the stones, to the places which are sacred. So what is your opinion about those persons who were ascribed to Muhammad Mustafa as being companion, as being offspring, as being wives, as being close relatives, as being close blood relatives? So when an animal is ascribed or attributed to sacred places, he himself is called Sha'irullah, eminences of God. So one can not doubt that everything ascribed to Muhammad Mustafa would be included in the eminence of Allah. In the eminence of Allah. Walal qala'id. And there are certain animals which are not being looked after by any goat herd, by any person, but they are just left. No one is there to look after them. But there is a collar put around their necks, just as a sign of an animal of sacrification. Means it indicates that this animal is for sacrification. It would be sacrificed in the altar of Mecca. Even if this collar may be put 2 months before, 3 months before, 8 months before the proper time. But all of these times, that animal would be respected. Just by putting a collar around its neck with the intention of sacrification. So when just putting a collar around the neck of an animal can change the category of an animal. So what is your opinion about the Quran, about the prophetic traditions, about the commentary of the Holy Quran, about the Islamic institutes, about the Islamic courses, about the people who sacrifice, who dedicate their whole lives for the research of Quran, for the research of prophetic traditions? Are they not the eminences? Are they not the emblems of Allah? Of course, Muslim scholars, Islamic books, Islamic institutes are the eminences of Allah. All of the mosques, all of the sacred places wherein Zikrullah is there. All of the Islamic activities are expected to be there. The places will be termed as the eminences of Allah. Therefore, they should be respected according to this very verse. Because what is the reason of their respect? What is the reason of their respect? Ascription of them to Allah. fatheration of them to Allah, attribution of them to Allah, relation of them to Allah. So when they are ascribed or related or attributed by means of a common person, they would be included. The animals would be included in the eminences of Allah. So what is the reason that a scholar should not be included in the eminences of Allah when an animal is included? Understand? Logically, everybody can easily understand the fact. When the reason is common, the order is common. Because the reason of order was known. The reason of order was the ascription of them to Allah. When anything would be ascribed to Allah, would be included in the eminences of Allah. And the people who are going to Baitullah Sharif should not be disturbed. They are also eminences. They are also inviolate. But the people who are believing that going to visit the shrine of Muhammad Mustafa was unlawful according to them, they gave their predictions about the permissibility of slaughtering of the Muslims. You must have known Makkah Badru. So this was not a bogus proverb, but it was fact. Because in those days, the Muslims experienced the slaughtering of the Muslims. In those days, many Muslims were slaughtered because they were going to Mecca Sharif and they were attacked by the Badaqida people. And when they were asked why they were killing the Muslims, they told them that according to their ideology, going and traveling to visit the shrine of Muhammad Mustafa was idolatry. Idolatry, paganism, shirk. Therefore, their life and their properties and their belongings were permissible for all of the true Muslims, and they themselves believed themselves to be true Muslims, and other themselves they were believing all of the Muslims to be infidel, to be pagans. Therefore, all of the people going to visit the shrine of Muhammad Mustafa were not Muslim. Therefore, their slaughtering and their bloodshedding was permissible according to them. But this ideology was totally wrong. And here, Quran says, وَلَا آمِنُ الْبَيْتَ الْحَرَامِ. Anybody who is going to visit the sanctuary, the inviolable mosque, Kaaba Sharif, should not be disturbed, should not be troubled, should not be interrupted. So as being Muslim, one's duty is to pay respect to the people who are going to Kaaba Sharif. Provided that those people are seeking for the blessing of Allah, means their intention to go there is just to seek the blessing of Allah. And I think everybody going there is seeking the blessing of Allah. So Ridwana and is clear. And if he is going to make a bargain about their activities and to give the scholarship, so that will not be included in this category. وَإِذَا حَلَلْتُمْ فَاصْطَادُوا. And when you come out of the pilgrim's clothes, you are allowed to hunt. Means as long as you are in the clothes of pilgrims, you are not allowed to hunt. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَنْ صَدُّوكُمْ عَنِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ أَنْ تَعْتَدُوا. And the people who had prevented you from the visiting of Kaaba Sharif, means this verse is referring to the event which had occurred at the time of Surah Hudaybiyah, treaty of peace of Hudaybiyah, because the Muslims were going to visit Kaaba Sharif with the intention of Umrah Sharif. And they were debarred. They were prevented in the way. And when the Muslims and Islam came in power, they were in a position to torture the non-Muslims, or at least to take the revenge on those people who had prevented them from the visiting of Kaaba Sharif. But Quran says, Kaaba is Kaaba. And humanity is humanity. As being Muslims, when you come in power, you are not allowed to misuse your power. Because alternation of power is a common experience. It's a commonplace thing. The power can come and can go back. But in all of the cases, you should be in justified position. Just like today, I express my ideas in today's speech that Muslims came in supreme power. The Muslims assumed the supreme power in the world. But in those days, the Muslims were very justified. Their action and visions were very accurate. And nobody can blame them. The Muslims misused their powers. Therefore, Muslims have got a right to demand the justification, to demand, to ask for a justified behavior, because Muslims did not misbehave in the time of being supreme power in the world. Here Quran says, when you came to power, you are prevailing the society nowadays, and all of the powers were invested to you, and all of the powers of sovereignty were conferred upon you. You are not allowed to take revenge on those peoples who misuse their powers. If they want to come to mosque of Haram, inviolable mosque, you should not debar them. But in the coming lines, it was announced that the non-Muslims are not allowed to come inside of the mosque, because mosque is a place where proper worshipping is required. When the improper worshipping is dishonor, blasphemy, disrespect, sacrilege to the inviolable mosque, it means that permission to them to come in the mosque is violation against the mosque. Therefore, they should be prevented. But all of their other activities should be as usual, because it would be misuse of your power, and you are not allowed to misuse the power or to misbehave with the people. Quran says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. This is an everlasting, a perpetual principle that all of the virtues, all of the pieties should be supported by the Muslims. All of goodness should be encouraged by the Muslims. It may be originated by the non-Muslims. Anyone can originate them. But if anywhere, at any time, by anyone, a virtue is originated, is found, is initiated, is started, it should be encouraged by the Muslims. But all of the evils, all of the misbehaviors, all of the misdeeds, all of the badness originated by anyone at any time in any country should be discouraged by the Muslims. Muslim is a sign of goodness, virtues, and good behavior, and good actions. Wattaqullah. Sometimes the law is absent. The executive of a country is absent. Judiciary of a country is absent. The vigilance of people is also absent. But Allah is never and not at any time absent. He is omnipotential, omnipresent. He is everywhere. He can check you. Therefore, while violating any regulation of Allah or transgressing any prohibition of Allah, you should observe the omnipresence of Allah, omnipotence of Allah. He can do whatever He likes, and He is everywhere. He knows everything. He can do whatever He likes. Therefore,